And welcome back to another episode of Inboxing. Inboxing is the podcast all about email marketing. And today we have an amazing guest. Really, we're very honored. Really, someone who came up just in the last 8 years and become really a dominant player in the field. And recently made a big purchase. Now they're part of they're not just an email sender anymore. They're really, much bigger than that. And it's really amazing to have our guests on today. And I think you'll enjoy this a lot. We have a lot to talk about. So without any further ado, please welcome Ross Andrew Paquette. And I hope I said that right, and he'll correct me in a second if I didn't say it right.
You absolutely did.
How do I say it? Yeah, all right.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure people say parquet all the time, or parquet.
I do.
Right?
Paquette, Paquette, Paquette. I don't know what the is from it personally.
Yeah, no, the first time I wrote it, I put an R in there, and I was like, wait, no, I don't think there's an R. Yeah, okay. Oh, we got it. Paquette. All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're really honored to have you on today. And let's just jump right in. So all right, Ross Andrew Paquette.
Paquette.
Tell me, Paquette.
You said it right the first time.
Okay, I screwed it up. All right, yeah. Well, QU often goes Paquette, like quack quack, but no. Okay, Paquette. All right. So tell us a bit about yourself. Yeah, where are you from? How did you get there?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Canadian. Outside of this last 13 months, I've lived in Canada pretty much my whole life. Maropost is based out of Toronto now at this point, but I'm actually from a really small town in northern Ontario, Timmins. I doubt anybody listening would have heard of that before. It's a mining and forestry town. Family still lives in Canada though, and the company's really been able to grow there now. Now we're in 4 different continents, so lots of expansion from that perspective.
Wow.
Yeah, so happy to dive into the background a little bit. I mean, I worked in tech sales, was sort of one of my first roles. Very quickly ended up at an email marketing provider, I guess you could say. Grew there really quick from kind of inside sales rep to director of sales within a year. Then went off to work for a US based company, and actually while I was there decided that I launched my own company, and at the time the focus was to just have a bit of a lifestyle business, let's call it. As in, I was going to get 10 customers, do $500,000 in revenue a year, have a pretty, decent product, and really just kind of enjoy from there. And naturally, things have expanded dramatically since that time.
Right. It's interesting. I'm curious to hear from you. Like, how do you think growing up in a small town in northern Ontario has helped you get to where you are? Like, does that give you big dreams when you grow up in a small town like that?
Not funny enough, not really. I mean, yes and no. I'd say there was a bunch of very much positives that whenever I start a family, I would sort of focus on the same. Where I played a lot of sports when I was younger. I skied for the Canadian ski team. I rode professionally. I played soccer, football, depending on what continent you're on, professionally as well. And so,
what did you ride?
Rowing, crew rowing.
Oh, rowing. Okay, I thought road.
Yeah.
Okay, I heard road, so it was like maybe riding.
Oh, no. No. Lots of moose where I grew up, funny enough. But yeah, so I think though growing up in a small town, the one thing that was really great is I spent all of my time outdoors, right? It'd be much different than living in a big city like Toronto, or where I went to university, which was Ottawa, which is just quite a bit of a different lifestyle to that. And at the same time, I mean, I do think it keeps you very grounded to your family and sort of the way of living in those much smaller, more remote regions.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. So what drove you, to start Maropost? I mean, you said a second ago that it was, so tell us about how'd that get going?
Yeah, so actually the main reason I started the company is in looking at the landscape, and this is now 10 or even 11 years ago. And it really hasn't changed all that much. The driving factor was the support side of things. So people really weren't, or customers, really weren't getting the support for the price they were paying. And back then, prices were quite a bit higher in terms of the overall industry. It didn't matter if you were on, MailChimp or Salesforce Marketing Cloud or or any solution out there. And so really that was the driving force, is that I was going to start this business, again, grow it to 500,000 or something like that, and provide 24-hour support. So mind you, at the time we were only 4 people. So Ross was the support rep. So I would just leave the live chat open or leave the ticket system open and answer them whenever they came in, or instantly whenever they came in. And so we've taken a lot of those philosophies all the way to today. I mean, our support side is still industry leading. Everything we do is 24 hours a day. We've got almost every channel, possible, where customers can speak to, a person, whether in-app chat, obviously the phone. Tickets have a 5-minute response time. So we've really carried that through all the way to until today.
Oh, wow. All right. I did not realize that.
We should probably talk about it more, but we don't.
Yeah, you definitely should be talking about that more, because it's not, it's not so, usually a company that's super focused like that, like you'll know it, like
Absolutely.
Customer service is our thing. Like you are the number one, which is how it should be, but it's not always that way. Yeah, but now you're more than just an ESP. You want to talk about that, like transitioning?
Yeah, absolutely.
To
Yeah, so we actually have had a really interesting backstory, and a lot of this is, it's public knowledge, which relates to the question around the e-commerce side of things. So we actually are 100% employee owned, which is quite unique in the tech community, and especially for our size. But we actually did have, I wouldn't call them investors, they were more partners, but we had people come into the business, purchase 25% in an all secondary round. So meaning the liquidity went to the shareholders, or effectively the owners. And we actually bought them out 2 years ago. And so that's a bit of a unique, of course, journey as well. And as that relates to e-commerce, a big part of the vision, I guess you'd say, going back to 2016, was more of I don't want to use the words all-in-one solution, because that's really not it, but sort of the all-in-one solution for the e-commerce industry in particular, where we would cover, of course, the marketing side of things that we've, got 12, 14 years experience in, but also jumping into the commerce side, and then further to that, the service and support side. So service and support, I mean like a Zendesk or Freshdesk, Gorgeous of the world, where we're managing chats and chatbots, tickets, and all that kind of stuff. So back to sort of the e-commerce side of things, that was a major focus of ours actually for the last 4 years. And with a lot of the distractions happening in the business and exiting, some of those partners and so on, we really weren't moving there as quickly as we would like. And so we acquired, as you saw, Neato back in December of last year. And really the main focus of that acquisition was, of course, the customers and the revenue and partners and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it was certainly the people within the organization and their ability their knowledge and their ability to really accelerate the development of the solution that will become this, call it all-in-one type approach. So really that's our of the verticals that we support, and we really do support almost all of them, but our 2 main areas of focus are commerce and publishing. That's really going to cover, a good 80% of a mid-market e-commerce company's tech stack.
And can you just fill in for our audience, like what is Neato and what does that provide? Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So Neato is an e-commerce platform based out of Australia. They had only been selling in Australia for the last, I think, 10 years for the most part. So probably less well known globally outside of Australia. They are the second largest platform within Australia, though. So that, just behind Shopify, I think it's more or less neck and neck. But they do go quite a bit deeper. They get into inventory management, shipping, order management. They're just a lot broader. They've got a sizable network of sales channels, going beyond like the Facebooks, Instagrams, and all that of the world. So they've actually done things very similar to Maropost. They've gone quite a bit deeper than, say, just an email service provider, quite a bit deeper than just an e-commerce provider in their case. And so that was quite appealing as well, given that both companies have large ecosystems of partners, right? E-commerce platforms and CRMs and all that kind of stuff that we integrate with. But at the same time, they've added a lot of great technology that they control and own as well.
Oh, wow. So congratulations on that purchase. Because clearly that'll give you a big leg up.
Absolutely,
help you expand and so many, like now you're competing with Shopify.
Yeah, well, the great thing is, the great thing is the platform is already coming together as a single solution. So when you log into the platform, you're not just seeing marketing, you're also seeing the commerce side of things. So if you think about it from, ownership or a CEO of, again, a mid-market e-commerce company, or even a small business, because Neato has clients, all the way down to, say, 500,000 in revenue per year. That's really the efficiency we're looking to bring to the table. And of course, most importantly, the data side of things. So getting that snapshot of how your business is doing from an acquisition perspective, from a conversion perspective, from a product perspective, can all be done in the same solution.
Okay, awesome. All right, so why do you feel that Maropost would be the best fit, and for which organization? I guess that question could be worded a little better, but what kind of company would be the best fit for Maropost? Is it definitely like a growing e-commerce brand? Would you say that?
Absolutely, yeah. So going back to our two main verticals, so our largest, vertical is, of course, commerce. I mean, that's the dominating factor typically with any, marketing automation provider. But we do have a significant amount of publishers that make up about 30%, and that can be, Fortune 500 or global publishing companies, all the way down to, more mid-market to SMB publishing or content houses as well. But we do, cross the entire board, as in, we've got finance companies, we've got airlines, we've got automotive. We do really service a lot of clients. And I mean, in a lot of cases, it depends on where our customers are coming from, right? So while, we've got a team of people certainly sourcing, our ideal customer profile, which is that mid-market e-commerce company, we do acquire customers from all the enterprise vendors, and they come from, just about anywhere.
Okay. Yeah. So what are your biggest learnings? You've been doing this, you've been building Maropost for about 10 years, right?
How much time do you have?
Yeah, as long as you need.
A lot. Yeah. So we've done things quite, as mentioned with a couple of the examples, we've done things differently. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I think a big part of our story is to look back, whether we, most likely our direction is to IPO within, the next coming years. And it's not for the sake of just IPOing for no reason, or the fact that I would want to be involved in a public company. That's not really a goal of mine. But I reference that because, we've been a profitable company. We've grown, I mean, 1 year we grew like 3,000%. So, the capability is there of doing it without, investor capital and, constantly being in this kind of money raising, grow by all costs approach. And so I would say, of all the things that I have learned, that's the biggest piece, which is ironic because we have Maropost Ventures. So we actually invest in companies through Maropost as well. But we're sort of like the, this anti-VC philosophy. And I think that's, that is definitely one of the biggest components, is that people can grow their businesses. They can build great products. They can acquire great customers, and they can do it all the while being, profitable and growing, of course, just the same. And I think that gives, founders and executives, in my opinion, a more difficult path, right? Because you're not raising $50 or $100 million, which seems to be, the standard these days. I guess some of the other learnings that I would say is, I mean, a lot of the key or kind of common themes, stay focused, right? When we were going through a couple of these major organizational changes, we lost a lot of focus, or we had too many products on the go. I mean, arguably we have that today, but we've got, of course, a much larger team to manage it, and a much, more direct vision of what the product organization or the product suite is going to look like. But I'd say that's another, kind of core element. And again, a very common theme that you hear from a lot of people, which is just to stick to, what you're best at. The other thing I would mention is, I think what's also really unique, and sort of a key learning, is just deciding who you want to be as a business. Like, whether, it doesn't matter if you're in the tech-based e-commerce business or any business, a lot of companies don't really know what they aspire to be, right? Everybody wants to build up their business and then, of course, sell it or have some semblance of an exit. But we're, I think, one of the, I shouldn't say few, but it probably is few, that are truly building, a long-lasting organization. So as soon as we decided that, or that was our direction or our outcome that we were looking for, everything became so much, I wouldn't say easier, but easier at least to, share with the company, share with our customers, share with our partners, and have them join on that same journey that we're heading on.
All right. Well, speaking of that journey, so then where do you see Maropost going in the next 2-3 years? I mean, I heard the word
Yeah,
IPO, but like, what do you think that'll bring
yeah.
into the company? Yeah, like let's hear it.
Yeah, so for us, because because we're not interested in selling to say a strategic, so like we don't want to be purchased by Shopify or Salesforce or anybody like that. I've seen far too many, as you have as well, major companies, the exact targets, the responses of the world do that, and I think that's a great outcome, especially if you're in kind of the investment landscape, right, where the founder maybe owns 5% of the business when that actually happens. So that's
Did you
really
work?
our
Sorry for
yeah.
cutting you off, but did you work with one of those brands? Because you said you went to the States and you worked in sales for one an
I worked for a
ESP,
couple
right?
of them, but yeah, none of the largest ones. But I've been across them.
Okay.
I mean, for as long as you have probably. So it's
Right.
you just the one thing I was always very passionate about was the product. So even though I came from a sales background, I loved doing product demos. I loved a lot of the advanced functionality. So I really dove into a lot of those areas. And actually, ironically, that's similar to what's happening today. So we have, of course, have a much larger team that's involved, but I still have a lot of my inputs around the product arena and sort of the direction we want to take the company in.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
But sorry, back to your question around our with our 2 to 3 year plan. So the rollout of that sort of overall suite is what's actively happening. So in let's call it 12 months from now, our customer will log in and manage all three of those core areas of their business. So if I'm setting up a storefront, if I'm launching a new journey or series of campaigns or SMS messaging or addressing customer tickets and customer chats and issues that they might have shipping where products are in the landscape, a lot of the focus is certainly in that area, and because there's really nobody doing that. That's the other key element. And one of the other core pieces to that sort of technology aspect is, and I don't like using this term because I think it's being overused, much like AI was a few years ago, but we are building ourselves in the way of a CDP. And so it's not that that's our focus, but all the data effectively for the customer or for the customer's customer, that is, will come into a single location. So even if you were using, funny enough, and this actually is happening today. So even if a customer is using our e-commerce platform for items 1 through 5, they might still be using Shopify or Magento or Hybris or something else that's out in the market. And so this data layer that we've created, or the CDP that we've created, allows our customers to consume information from anywhere, while at the same time having the single customer view. So if Hillel is sending out a email campaign, of course that's going to show up on Ross's profile, or Ross is visiting the site and looking at these products, or he's submitted a ticket because his shipped or his product hasn't arrived, or he's opened up a chatbot. All of that is coming into one singular area. So across your business, any department, any person who has access to that gathers all that information on that single customer and can therefore service and support them better or market to them better.
Right. Well, it sounds like early on, like offering support and live chat, and also having a support channel integrated with on the same ESP gave you a huge leg up on competition. Yeah, I mean, like,
for sure, it'll be a totally different platform. Yeah, like, and what the struggle really is the struggle is figuring out how to market and message this platform that goes into a number of different directions without overly confusing the user who might be just looking for one thing, right? Like, you might just be looking for email or marketing automation, and that's great. You can just do that if you want. And if you want to have these other areas, so we'll have clients who will come in just using service as an example, and they'll be using Shopify and MailChimp and Salesforce Marketing Cloud and whatever. But then, of course, we'll naturally look to progress them through the suite of tools and give them, again, the flexibility of migrating certain things that might be more difficult over time.
Right. No, for sure. I mean, that's probably a challenge. It's been a challenge, I'm sure, for you guys, because you're right. Like, when people are looking for an ESP, they don't realize, oh, I don't need a third party to support the support tickets, and another one for live chat. Just everything being integrated in one thing. Oh, 100%. I mean, from experience,
plugins. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a world of
Exactly.
plugins and integrations, and everyone's, API and dev work, and it's
Yeah.
just, yeah. So good for
Yeah.
you for
Yeah.
dreaming that up and getting it out there. But like you said, the marketing it and getting, explaining that in a marketing message in a way that's really, yeah, it's a challenge to just say,
Mhm.
in a few words explaining what that difference is.
Yeah.
But
It's very difficult, to be honest. Yeah. Without going
right,
down kind
I'm
of
thinking
a
about it.
confusing hole. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure, board meetings and whatever have, banged heads
Yeah.
against the wall. Like, yeah, that's just not, yeah. I mean, like, there's a dustbin, full of bad ideas that went,
Exactly. Yeah.
that were pitched.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, really, really cool. Very exciting. So just
Mhm.
focusing a little bit more on the inbox, so what, changes do you see in the inbox? Or is it really
Yeah.
so much about the inbox anymore? Like, is it, like,
It's a good question. Yeah. It is and it isn't. I mean, I don't think the generic ways of email marketing are changing. As in, people are still sending out mass emails. The fastest way to generate revenue and engagement, all of that is still going to be in that format. Are things like product recommendations, content recommendations, AI driven messaging, journeys, one-to-one messaging. I'm not, obviously they make a difference, certainly in the respective situations, but if we're thinking of, again, e-commerce or really anybody, welcome campaigns, abandoned cart campaigns, like people are still doing the basics. And the irony is some of the largest companies in the world are barely doing the basics, because
uh,
they've got a lot more red tape every time they want to launch a new campaign or journey or whatever. So I do think the industry has done some good work with simplifying a fair amount of that. Like if we maybe use journeys as the easy example, but you're still in that scenario like we talked about a few minutes ago. You need all these different plugins. So like if you're using an enterprise platform, you need a plugin just to launch some simple journeys, right? Because doing it in the enterprise solutions requires engineering and development resources that no one has a shortage of, or sorry, an excess of. If you're using some of the more SMB to mid market solutions, it's still quite difficult. You're limited in terms of the segmentation splits or the data related splits that might take place for customer A/B testing in those scenarios. And I think the biggest thing, and I should have shared this as part of our kind of 2 to 3 year plan, because it's something I'm very passionate about, is no one has time anymore, right? So they don't have time to even update their journeys. They don't have time to, run, even sometimes subject line testing. Like I believe that you should use A/B testing for every campaign, even if you're just changing like a couple words in the subject line. It's very simple to do that in a lot of platforms. So one thing that we've been actually working on that relates back to this, just the inbox side. Sorry, that's not really inbox. So maybe I'll save this one for after. But I think everything is relatively remaining the same, as it pertains to just the inbox side of things. Working around changes that, Google, Yahoo, and all of that make. Obviously, you saw that Yahoo was acquired. I'm curious as to what happens with that, since Verizon was integrating all of the sort of deliverability tools and inboxes effectively of all of those different organizations: AOL, Yahoo, Verizon, obviously Comcast, and so on. So I think that's going to be just sort of a unique, shift, or a unique shift in the market where, you have to focus just more on updating the actual, kind of content and strategies you're executing on than thinking more about the deliverability side of things, as an example.
right, for sure. And I think you're dead on, in your answer. But that, yeah, email's far from dead. It's very much
No,
alive
no,
and
yeah, not
kicking.
even close to that. Yeah.
And you're right. Like even just generic messaging, but the
Mm-hmm.
more you put into it, the more you get out of it, and that's really,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and that's sort of a good segue into one of the comments I was going to make, which was one thing we've done, and we haven't really come up with terminology around it because no one's doing this either, is we basically created, let's call it a marketing assistant. It's not AI driven, it's machine learning for the most part. But what we're really looking to shift from is to allow our customers to receive notifications to make changes within, let's say, their account or within their strategy. So if Ross hasn't looked at, I'm going to use journeys again because it's easy. If Ross hasn't looked at journeys in the last 6 months, or sorry, a journey in the last 6 months, it will notify you of that and notify you of changes that you should make down the line. So if it says, hey, you've been running this A/B split test in this journey, check this to see who the winner is and optimize the campaign. And whether that optimization is just updating a subject line, ideally, obviously changing the content, and then able to run a new split. Those reminders or recommendations will really kind of change the direction of how I think the marketers these days execute on a strategy, because a lot of the recommendations will of course be based on the data that we're seeing, right? If you've got, Hillel went in day one and set up a welcome series or an abandoned cart journey or something like that, and left it there for 6 months, didn't touch it, or even frankly a year or more, which I've certainly seen. This gives you that reminder to come back and check and make sure that, there isn't revenue being left on the table, there isn't engagement being missed because this content is just, relatively out of date. So I think that's a really important, direction for the industry as a whole to head in. My belief is there's not a ton of innovation occurring especially on the email side of things in particular. But I think there's a lot of, kind of new, philosophies that can be embedded in these strategies. And that's definitely one that we're focused on.
Right. I was wondering, because I just recently did an episode about this, but AMP for email, is that something Maropost will be supporting?
Yeah, we do now, actually. Yeah, we support it now. Yeah, we do. I don't think there's enough, conversation happening around that. It's just kind of something that happened and a few people are talking about it, but it's, so it's something we support. It's just not something we've heavily, promoted as part of the application.
Right. No, because I think it really goes to what you were talking about, that companies don't have time necessarily to really take advantage of even great tools that are available. It's just, even getting good messaging out there and making sure the emails that are automated are up to date and not sending totally irrelevant emails because you haven't been paying attention. But even what you said about your own platform, that you'll get an email you've been running this A/B test for the last 6 months. You have enough data to check it and pick. To be honest,
people just forget, right? And that is, it's another area we're heavily focused on, which is ensuring, of course, every year we add more and more or hundreds of new customers, and so people who were on the platform 5 years ago didn't have access to all these new features, new functionality. And while of course we let them know through webinars and emails and all that kind of stuff, they don't always have the time to implement them. So one thing that we're very cognizant of is also when customers come onto the platform, I think everybody should be doing this, to ensure that you really check off as many boxes as you can. And some platforms are doing this quite well, and some platforms aren't doing it well at all. But I think that goes a long way, because at least there's something there. Right, because it's one thing to have something versus nothing, and then they're like, no, forget it. We'll put that on the Q3, action item list, which never ends up, being executed on.
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. We kind of touched on this already, but if you talk about maybe the top 2 or 3, I think we're going to talk about customer service and the all-in-one, stuff that you've been building, really.
Yeah. A lot of that would fall within there. I mean, almost everything. We should ask this question first. All the areas we covered really set us apart. I mean, the email side of things is easy, but I mean, we do SMS, we do push and in-app messaging. So our customer, so I guess you can say our SMS first or our push and in-app messaging first. Customers are growing more over time. The all-in-one solution is really going to be the huge sort of leap in the opposite direction of what would be considered the entire email marketing or marketing automation space today, as far as we see it, because there really just isn't a competitive landscape for that type of solution unless you want to have literally a good 15 or 20 providers that are all plugged into a solution, which is what people are doing today. But I think, if I were just focused on the email side of things, I would say it's, a lot of that, kind of CDP, marketing assistant, machine learning functionality that we're building, or effectively just how we're building it, or the use cases we're building it for, that are quite a bit different.
Right. Okay. All right. So what are your top 5 email marketing tips?
Yeah, all 5 are kind of the same, ironically. I mean, more automation, you know what I mean? Leverage as recommendations where you can, especially if you're doing the one-to-one communication. Don't, underestimate the power of, of mass email or bulk messaging. That's still, as we were discussing, is still the reigning champ in terms of, e-commerce and driving revenue. Like, I think that just centering on that, kind of tip for 1 second, the focus on, the strategy from an automation and a content recommendation or personalization perspective is great, but you spend, 10 or 20, or probably far more than that, actually, probably more than 20 times the amount of time executing on those strategies, then ensuring that some of the more simplistic strategies you do have are performing really, really well, right? So I still see customers doing this today. They don't use A/B testing, as we mentioned, or multivariate testing, and it's really, simple or an insignificant amount of time to just do a really good job with individual campaigns. Maybe that's a good example to use. I think one of the top email marketing, tips I would say for 2021 is just making sure you're working with, the right provider. And it depends, of course, on the size of the company, right? Like if I'm talking about SMB, it's really hard to go to, to MailChimp or to Klaviyo or to somebody like that and expect them to be invested in your success, if you know what I mean. But for the, for the mid-market, and certainly for the I'm hesitant to use enterprise because that doesn't always apply, but the enterprise side of things, it's just finding a provider that is truly invested in like the success and the goals of the company. I think that really goes a long way. It's something that we've, as a company, have really focused on for our customers. It's not about Maropost, but there are others out there that are doing the same. And I think that's, that's a really important factor. I would say those would be, I think I've got 4 there. What else would I recommend? I think one of the other key components is that companies aren't as focused on deliverability anymore, it seems, especially the kind of, let's call it the upper mid-market to enterprise. I think that there's more of an emphasis on, feature functionality, and of course the analytics side, but there's a little less, dedication to the delivery aspect of it all. I think that's super important. I'm sure you do as well. But I would say, gathering as much data as you can on, inbox placement, ensuring that the provider or providers you're working with give you visibility into sort of like blacklist monitoring, because that is still very important. It can still be a huge detriment to, the success of an email or marketing automation strategy. So I think that's a really important factor. Obviously, we've seen the consolidation happen, in that industry with Return Path, Validity, and now 250 OK all being under one roof. So there's really nobody else, but there are a couple providers I know out there. Inbox Aware is one of them. Kickbox is another that are, launching more functionality into that arena. And I think that's a really important, I guess you'd say toolkit or tool within the toolkit of any, kind of marketing automation leader.
For sure. I know like the ESPs, I mean, you're one of them, but they're investing a lot in having like, deliverability and compliance officers and, coaching.
Well, some aren't. Yeah. And I mean, there's that. I think that's the one thing we just said, like the coaching side of things. Like there's, a lot of companies do really well with, coaching people on how to use their platforms. Some less, even sometimes Maropost, but, one thing that's I find, or just based on what I've seen, is the delivery side is sort of falling at the wayside, and it creates an unintended expectation that the platform, I'm not talking about Maropost, just in general, needs to, or is accountable to this area where it's not 100%, but it's nearly 100%, on the companies, and it's based on content, it's based on your domain reputation, it's based on the strategy that you're executing on. It's based obviously on complaints. So I think that's just continues to be a very important arena to focus on.
Oh, for sure. Okay. And what are the big? I mean, you use deliverability. Let's go with that one.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest one. Yeah.
All right. We're talking about the top pitfalls. Just whatever I know.
I mean, deliverability is one. I would say, again, going back to one of the comments before, ensuring you're leveraging, the most valuable technology that your service provider offers, right? Not just, I know I was advocating for sort of like the batch and blast or the mass email side of things, because I think people are going too far down, the one-to-one side of things. But I think just leveraging, again, the most valuable functionality of those platforms, while ensuring, again, that you're with a provider that makes it easy to do that, right? So going back to my comment earlier, right? If you need an engineer or developer to execute on something, like, you're unlikely to have a successful quarter, a successful year, or let's call it a profitable quarter, a profitable year as it pertains to your marketing program. I'd say that is one of the main, not to refer to any competition or anything like that, but that is one of the major pitfalls. People typically think, some of the enterprise platforms are the right solutions for them, but they're really the wrong solutions for them, because the ROI just drops dramatically. Like, as in, if you're going to generate, I'm just making up a number here, but 500,000 a month in marketing automation revenue, and you're a mid-market or an enterprise organization, but it costs you, 200 or 300 just in service fees, from whether that be design, whether that be execution, whether that be, internal employees and so on. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. You're at kind of a neutral position, and becomes almost more of a branding exercise. And I've seen more and more companies do this on the enterprise side poorly. And I've seen a lot of companies, ironically, on sort of the more SMB side, do it really well. When I say do it really well, I mean, find the right platform and literally leverage every, feature, function as best they can out of it, and truly, appreciate the power of, of email and of the marketing automation side of things. Because you can use platforms that cost $1,000 a month and generate, hundreds of thousands or millions in revenue a month. I've seen it. Some of our customers do it all the time. We have a few clients who generate they're in e-commerce, obviously, but generate over 75% of their revenue from email, which I think is insane. Oh, but hey, if you're, if you're really great at it, and, the ROI is, in the, hundreds to one, why not?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just another one you mentioned before is not doing A/B testing, which is just, especially if you're running on a big list, a huge campaign.
I think it's super common. Yeah, I mean,
it's just lost revenue, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you see in your inbox that makes you cringe?
You're gonna laugh. So I literally don't subscribe to almost a single email campaign or email newsletter or anything like that. I also receive about 1,000 emails a day, so it's maybe not 1,000, probably around 700. So
what about from your own clients?
I don't know, none. I mean, so because a lot of the stuff that I track as it pertains to, day-to-day work, I'm doing that in other systems, right? We have inbox monitoring tools, so I can see content and campaigns and strategy, and I really enjoy actually the design side of things. Actually, I cringe when I see spam in my inbox as somebody who's sort of in the anti-spam arena. What will be a good example, actually? And I'm trying to think of, because I still get emails from companies that, actually, ironically, probably have a poor email marketing strategy. So let's say I bought a plane ticket from an airline, 3 years ago, and then just now I'm getting an email from them. I still remember because I know I took that flight, but I'm like, why am I getting this email 3 years? Maybe that's a good example. And I'm using that as an example because I'm staring at an email right now, and I won't reference the company, but I took a flight with them, I think even 4 years ago. I was overseas. I was in Asia, and this is the first email I've ever received from them. So it's 4 years later. It took me to get from purchasing the ticket to onto their email list. I would say that makes me cringe because it actually makes me feel or realize how, these, again, go back to the point we were saying before, how these companies struggle to execute on a proper strategy, and how, if there's any engineering requirements, as in if you can't simply make a connection between your booking system and, and your marketing automation solution, like, how much revenue has this company, missed, right? So every time I've flown to that country since, I've not booked with them, right? That is the whole essence of the conversation they should be looking to have. So I'd say that's probably a pretty good example, actually. And another good one, now that we're on this topic and I can complain for a second, is I see this a lot in travel and hospitality, which is ironically what just reminded me of that, where you receive these emails, especially from, and I don't want to use any names, but from the kind of travel aggregators, let's say, where the email there's just so much happening, right? Book a ticket, book a hotel, book a car, book insurance, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, how would a person, dissect or work their way through that? You know what I mean? And figure out like, well, why did I even come to this site, or why did I even subscribe to this newsletter? Like, what was the point? I do believe that, companies need to get a little bit, in that regard, need to get quite a bit more, pointed in the approach that they're taking, which ironically is the reverse to the conversation we were having before. Like in those scenarios, if Hillel is looking to go to, Europe or Spain, let's say, as an example, he's just trying to go to Spain, right? So let's get him to go to Spain with us or with one of our partners, to then generate that revenue. And that's where, ironically, the one-to-many approach wouldn't work well. And you have to be, extremely granular in what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. I think what you're pointing out is that really like batch and blast can work for certain brands that maybe, let's say, have a lot of products, or the opposite. I mean, they're selling more or less a few products, and it's a niche audience. And again and again.
Well, like as a good example, if would be a good airline, if Lufthansa is offering like, a discount on all their flights, yes, you can send that to everyone. You know what I mean? But if Hillel is looking to go to Madrid, right, sending him an offer or an email that relates to Lufthansa and discounts for everyone is not going to be helpful. But getting the information that was what he was looking at, or the ticket he was looking at, or the trip he was looking at booking into the campaign to thereby, further facilitate that booking. That's, I think, where there's this huge disparity in terms of the effort that's required to, execute on that strategy, I suppose you could say.
All right. Do you have any favorite brands in the inbox? Like emails you actually do subscribe to?
For the guy who doesn't subscribe to any emails here, I'm actually doing a quick scroll. Let's see what's in here. To be honest with you, not really. It's terrible for me to say that, but I've actually gone back over 2 days here. So I obviously, of course, I have favorite brands, but I'm very much a creature of habit. So I wear, the same clothing, I wear the same shoes, I wear the same, I use the same services consistently. I just find that's much easier in terms of day-to-day decisions. But I mean, none of those really relate to their email or marketing automation strategy, to be honest with you. It's more related to just my comfort of utilizing and the reputation of those services, which I think is a big part of the marketing automation strategy as well, is continuing to develop, again, your brand and develop the reputation that you want your customers to feel when they do see your email come in, or when they do see your products come into their inbox. Okay,
so now we'll go a little bit back in history. When you actually got emails from brands, like, do you have any favorite? You once worked for one of the ESPs, or multiple. I'm saying any email campaigns that you've seen and like, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah. Back when Uber launched in Toronto, they had a really great series of campaigns. So Toronto, I don't think most people would know this. When Uber was launching, Toronto was actually one of their key markets. So it was the first place globally that offered all of Uber's services. So Uber Pool, Uber X, Uber, every one of them. Like, I think actually now, even when you go in there, as an example, I think there's 3 of them in Stockholm, Sweden. Toronto has like 7 or 8 or something like that. And so when they first launched their obviously service in Toronto, there was of course a lot of interest, and they did a really great job of getting people from understanding the service, which again was relatively foreign at the time. We were all used to just taxis and so on, to getting people into the car. I guess you could say. So it's in utilizing a combination of explaining what the service means, like you're getting into a car with a random person, plus we're going to give you some funds to take your first trip, plus we're going to ask you about your experience after the fact and ensure that we leverage that data to, further communicate with you and then further improve on the, effectively the web, the booking and so on experience as well. So I guess the reason I'm referencing that is you could see a direct correlation between the content that you were getting into your inbox, and the experience you were receiving, while using the app and while using the actual services in getting into the car and then the post experience there as well. I'd say that was one of the best ones because I actually felt like it was all one-to-one communication, which it certainly would have been in terms of, transactional and all that kind of stuff. But everyone would have been receiving the same thing given the, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of bookings that they do every single month.
For sure.
So that
And
was
it's funny you mentioned them specifically because I've seen examples from them that people, have highlighted.
Yeah. And I think one of the key elements, like going back to the comment around that I made around the design friendly side of things, is that's an area that I've actually been trying to explore further. As in, who is running great campaigns from a design perspective, not just from a conversion. Obviously, that's what they're trying to do anyway. But I think, much like the hundreds of websites we see every day, right, there is a significant amount of appeal to a great looking email campaign, whether that's, I'm trying to think of one that I saw actually from a company called Lift Flyboards, if you're familiar with them. So it's like a little, have you heard of them before I explain that?
No, I have not. But.
Yeah, so it's basically a board. It's a hydrofoil. So there's a mast coming down below, and then there's a little electric motor that is effectively propelling you out of the water. It's a really neat product that one of my friends has, and they did a campaign, and it was clearly less of a sales campaign, like not necessarily meant to push people outside of the design aspect, but it was extremely, I guess you could say, high resolution. It reminds you of a lot of the sites you see that are more kind of the panoramic imagery, showing like Mount Everest in like high definition. It was that in an email, and I always really resonated with that campaign in particular, just because I felt like it connected with people who are really interested in that side of things. I don't mean the design side of things. I just mean that that photography that we all see and we're like, wow, like that's just such a beautiful shot. And when you can see that, whether it's on a website, in an email, in a message of some sort, I think that really comes across as as a valuable experience. Whether you even cared about the product or whatever they were selling or not is another story.
All right. What are your proudest achievements at Maropost so far?
Oh, there's a lot of them. I'd say one of the going back and thinking a little bit on the product side of things is our journey builder back when we launched it, which was like 9 years ago or 8 years ago, was definitely well beyond its time. That was sort of a key element on the product side of things. Executing on the vision that we've been doing now is certainly proud. Obviously, we haven't finalized that achievement, but being able to acquire a company for $60 million that with absolutely no venture or investor funding, I think is certainly makes me proud of the team and what we've been able to do over the last 10 years. The fact that geez, where do I start? Oh, I guess you're asking for one, so maybe I should stop there. I would say I would say that last one would certainly be the most recent, and on the product side, launching that journey tool that we did and the amount of time we did it as well. I've seen our technical team literally launch features in like 30 minutes. I remember one time they launched something into the application while I was doing a demo. As in, we were talking about this feature on the demo, and they launched it into the account I was doing the demo on, and for everybody else during that time. It wasn't, of course, it wasn't like launching dynamic content or personalization or something like that, but it was still pretty exciting to see, and something that really makes me proud of the team that we built.
Awesome. All right, we're going to the other way. Hope you can handle it. So what's your biggest professional fashla, which is a Hebrew slang word for faux pas or screw up? And you can pass on this if you want.
Yeah, that one's tough. Well, I would say the easiest one, and it's a bit generic, obviously, but getting distracted, about five years ago with, bringing on partners and then, expanding the team in sort of ways that were outside of my, at the time, experience, right? So hiring people from different companies that you think have the same philosophies. And this actually goes back to the start of the call. You asked me, how growing up in a small town, has impacted the way I sort of work today is, I think that everybody's just being honest and transparent, and there's no, hidden agendas. And that's not like a complaint. Just people are the way they are. And so I think when you come from a small town, you don't really realize a lot of that. So we sort of went through this period that, you know, the mistake would have been how, you know, how I thought everybody was just singing the same tune that I was, when in reality they weren't. They were singing their own tune, or they had different motivations or different outcomes they were looking for that didn't relate to the, you know, vision of the company, or effectively the direction that we were looking to go in. And that really hurt, is why I say that. It wasn't like, this wasn't just like like Ross had a couple bad weeks. Like, it was like 4 years of not ideal recurring situations, I suppose you could say. And I think that's when, you know, not to turn it into an entrepreneurial comment, but that would have been a time, if I could ever equate it to a moment where somebody, I'm not saying myself, but somebody would quit, it would be in that moment. You know, and that's what I talk a lot about, you know, in just general context, talk a lot about, you know, how people should build their businesses and how that will help. It's not always about the monetary or the growth side of things. It's a lot of times about just, you know, how they will be able to work their way or weave their way through the, you know, the landscape that is starting or building a business.
All right. I really appreciate that. So thanks a lot. That was definitely what to think about. For sure. And I'm just giving you the floor, and you can just say whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's your Ross's final thoughts. Here we go.
Yeah. I think it's just never forgetting, you made the comment before, like just how critical and valuable. Actually, this is one of the most important things. I should have used this a few times, or said it a few times. I do feel like marketing automation and email as well are being diminished in a way, in that everybody's looking for the new shiny toy all the time. So they're, you know, dropping, let's say, hundreds of thousands, or in many cases, millions of dollars into strategies that are new, but aren't necessarily proven. It's not that you should ignore those things, right? It's that companies in general should approach them from a testing perspective. But because they've been, you know, tackling the shiny and new, you know, they're ignoring the things that really can drive significant value, whether that's, again, as we talked about, from a branding perspective, obviously most importantly from a revenue perspective, but from a content perspective, from a you know, I don't even want to say thought leadership, but just from a, you know, from a thought leadership perspective, I suppose you could say. I think that's a part that just in some ways is getting ignored in certain verticals. So not in all, right? Like, as you know, this sort of SMB mid-market arena is really experiencing a resurgence because of not only some of the platforms that are out there, but because of the appreciation that size of a business has for being able to spend $1 and generate $300 worth of revenue, right? And that is not extending itself into, you know, kind of the mid-market, upper mid-market, you know, and certainly not into the enterprise, where we're going back to that ROI conversation we had before. So I think for anybody, you know, thinking about their programs or how valuable it is, it's you know, execute on the basics and just do it really well, and continue that, and ensure that you have a direct correlation between, you know, the effort or the resources or even the cost side of things and the outcome, right? Which for some industries is harder, right? You're not going to go and send out 5 email campaigns and sell like 25,000, you know, BMWs or something like that. But there are efforts that companies can make to truly understand the value that's coming out of it. It being a program. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. It's been really great talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on the program. So I just wish you a lot of luck. We'll be talking to Maropost a lot, I'm sure. And you know, if you'd like to become a sponsor of Inboxing, you know, we'd be happy to take you aboard.
Absolutely. Sure. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Absolutely.
All right, and that was Ross Andrew Paquette. No R, Paquette. So this was Inboxing episode 13. Episode 14 is actually going to be interesting, a little preview, but we might be talking to the email marketing team from a relatively big email brand. So that should be interesting. I hope you'll tune in for that. And that's our show for today. We're looking for sponsors for season 2. We're wrapping up I think episode 14 is going to be the last of season 1. So anyone's interested in becoming a sponsor, you can reach me at hillel@hillelberg.com. And that's all.